The Menopause Murders by Mary Maloney and Ed Markel, excerpt from Chapter 11. Wind spun leaves in a chaotic dance along the sidewalk as Debbi ran to her car, feeling the cold rain soak through her chenille sweater. Finally inside, she started the engine and turned the heat to full blast, the windshield fogging as she stripped off the wet sweater and used it to wipe the windshield. Instead of improving visibility, it made the window a smeary mess of moisture. The windshield wipers thwacking from side to side didn't help at all. She shivered, feeling like a soggy rat. The heater was taking a long time to blow hot air. She needed to start driving, then the windshield would clear up. At least the rear defrost gave her a clear view out the back of the car. Inching her way out of her diagonal parking spot, she checked carefully in all directions. The heavy pounding rain fomented a new headache as she swung out, put the car in drive, and headed down Tacoma Avenue. The wide two-lane street was packed with traffic, and cars on both sides kept pulling out of their diagonal spots, trying to insert themselves into the slow afternoon jam. Debbi's headache homed in on the spot right between her eyes, a knife stabbing her with sharp little jabs. Then her ears started ringing. Pressure built inside her ear canals as if someone had stuffed cotton in them. The ringing was high-pitched and thin, but it still made her squint. Hunched over the steering wheel, trying to wipe the windshield as the glass fogged up so thick she couldn't see, Debbi swore at the top of her lungs and pounded the wheel. As she pumped her brakes, trying to see out the side windows to find a place to pull over, her charm bracelet snagged on the foam wheel cover she'd bought last year to cushion the hard plastic. She pulled gingerly, not wanting to break the clasp, her eyes darting from the wheel to the windows and back out the front windshield. She finally freed the bracelet, but she'd worked up a sweat doing it. Suddenly the car was unbearably hot. The heater vents on the dash now blasted scalding air at her face, detonating another hot flash that made her whole body feel sick all over. It was bad enough the hot flashes made her burn up, but the wave of nausea that accompanied them added insult to injury. She should have listened to Ellen from the get-go and taken the drugs. Right now she'd down a gallon of pills that would make this feeling go away. Kale and broccoli and dong quai were not cutting it. The ringing got louder, and she threw her hands over her ears, but it did nothing to cut the volume. Debbi turned off the heat and pumped up the air conditioning. Hurry, damn it! What was taking the AC so long? She stripped off her shirt, sweat dripping down her neck and onto her breasts. Sitting in the car in just her bra finally gave her some relief. If she could take off her jeans, she would have done that too. But as she pushed her cheeks up to the vent, blowing cold air, blurry red taillights filled her vision. She punched her foot hard on the brakes, but the sudden action made them lock up, and the car skidded ahead. A loud, jarring crunch rattled her car as she stopped hard. She'd just hit a car pulling out of the parking lot in front of her. Oh, for crying out loud. All she wanted was to get to Bubbles and get a drink. Now she'd be stuck here exchanging insurance cards and driver's licenses, waiting for a cop to show up to take an accident report. Windshield still coated with fog, she lowered the window. Rain battered her face, but the cold water felt oh so good. Cars honked behind her, traffic piling up. She noted in her rear view mirror, let 'em honk. It wasn't like they were hauling butt in this weather anyway. The car in front of hers, halfway out of its parking spot in front of a tall brown brick building, was an expensive BMW, baby blue with Oregon plates. Probably some idiot from out of state who didn't know how to pull out of a diagonal parking space. She hoped her insurance company would take her side. The driver's side door opened on the BMW, and a short, fat man got out. His face was a mess of anger, and he was already swearing at her and waving his arms before he got halfway to her car. Her eyes took in his brown skin, thin mustache, and a bald pate that the rain seemed to bounce off of. He wore a cheap business suit, giving her the impression of a vacuum salesman. She guessed him to be 40-ish, maybe East Indian or Pakistani. Debbi could hardly understand his words, what with his thick accent. Look what you do! Look what you do! He jabbed a finger at her through her open window. Get out here and see what you do! She scowled and pushed the button to raise the window. Then she locked the door. He banged his fist on her hood. What a jerk. Did he expect her to stand out in the pouring rain and argue with him? Well, he could just stand there and pound her car till hell froze over. She leaned close to the cold air streaming out the vents, wishing the ringing in her ears would subside. The stabbing between her eyes grew sharper, making her squint. His roof pounding increased in volume and insistence. and the low thumping sound exacerbated her headache. She glanced at his face that was pressed up against the glass, a distorted Picasso of rage. She stuck out her tongue at him. More cars honked. Some tried to veer around her car, squeezing past the parked vehicles on the opposite side of the two-lane street. But the oncoming drivers weren't giving way, and more honking erupted. Debbi clamped her hands over her ears. She couldn't take the cacophony much longer. It had grown into a macabre symphony, something Mahler or Mussorgsky would have written, or Wagner. She thought about that hilarious Bugs Bunny cartoon that had Elmer Fudd singing, "Kill the Wabbit, kill the Wabbit." What piece was that from? Oh yeah, Rossini's Barber of Seville, which made her wonder why a barber would be the focus of an opera, and did the barber kill anyone? Probably didn't kill any rabbits, that's for sure. She swiveled her head. The irate foreigner was yanking on her door handle. "Just get in your car," she yelled, knowing he couldn't hear her. No way was she going to lower the window again. She tried to gesture to him, but he probably couldn't see much through her completely fogged up windows. "I don't have time for this." What was the big deal over a little fender bender anyway? If the guy had any damage, he could just file a claim with his insurance. She didn't have to stick around. So let him report her license plate. She'd pay her deductible, and the insurance company could take care of it. She was sick of men yelling at her, sick to death. A glance behind her showed the traffic had cleared. Someone had pulled out on the other side of the street, and a way opened up a lane. Cars flowed at a steady pace past her window. Now was her chance. She put her foot on the gas and eased backward, her head craned to see out the back. The man pounded harder on her window. "What do you do? What do you do? Stop! Stop!" came the muffled accusations. When Debbi was back far enough, she swung the wheel to the left, hoping to go around him, but the idiot wouldn't get away from her car. What was it with men yelling at her while she drove? He stayed right by her door, even when she accelerated ahead, past his parked car that protruded into the street. Rain came down in sheets, and though her wipers were swishing furiously, the windshield was still steamed up. Another attempt to wipe the fog with her damp sweater produced the same dismal results. Damn. She only needed to get a couple of blocks away from this maniac, and then she could get a towel out of her trunk. She always kept old towels in there to wipe down the windows when needed. Just as she was about to zoom forward, seeing the street clear ahead, the fool jumped in front of her car. Last thing she needed was to hit another man with her car. She slammed her foot down on the brake, put the car in park, threw open the door, and jumped out. "What the hell is wrong with you?" The man straightened, his mouth agape, dark brown eyes wide. He waggled an accusing finger at her. "You not dressed. You shameful. What you doing no clothes on? Shame! Shame!" Debbi glanced down and noticed she was only in her bra and jeans. A cute bra, too. The one she'd bought at Victoria's Secret sale after Christmas. She didn't have many physical assets to brag about, but she did have a nice set of knockers, as her crass husband used to tell her, back when he actually looked at her body. And this particular white scooped bra didn't leave a whole lot to the imagination. Add to the fact that the sheer fabric was soaked through from sweat and rain. The man couldn't take his eyes off her chest, as if he'd never seen a woman's breast in his life. She imagined him married to a woman who went to bed in a hijab that fully covered her whole body, and he probably had sex in the dark to top it off. Rain drenched her as she stood there, a laugh working its way out of her mouth. The situation was a bit ridiculous. Two people standing in a downpour, one half naked and the other ogling. She imagined he'd all but forgotten the fender bender. Debbi had never been an exhibitionist. In fact, she might say she was a downright prude. So she even shocked herself when she reached back and unclasped her bra, then whipped the article of lingerie off her chest and let it all hang out. She swung the bra in the air like a stripper, and a few cars honked enthusiastically as they drove by. Debbi smiled and waved. She felt wholly liberated, with the cool rain beating on her exposed skin, her hair a mushy mop sticking to her shoulders and back. She'd all but forgotten the ringing in her ears and the stabbing pain between her eyes. An apoplectic expression came over the man's face, and he started to back away from her as if she had the plague. He held his hands up to ward her off. "You want some of this?" she yelled over to him, shocked to hear the words come out of her mouth. She took a few steps toward him down the street. She giggled at the horrified look on his face. Shameful, he'd said, as if a woman's body was immoral, sinful, something to hide. Men like him, men of all ethnicities, were more than happy to use and abuse women, and then discard them as trash. How were women supposed to feel good about their bodies, have some decent self-esteem, when men continually made them feel worthless?